Hey, horror fans, welcome back to Jay vs. Horror and another episode of 90s Thriller Rewind. Today we're going to be talking about 1990s Blue Steel. And yes, I have seen this listed also at 1989, but that's fine because we're going to talk about a few of those late 80s thrillers with these two. We'll probably get into Sea of Love with Al Pacino, and of course Blue Steel, which we're talking about today. And Blue Steel is kind of an action thriller. It's also got a psychosexual side to it and a psychopath side to it. And it's a film directed by Kathryn Bigelow, and even with some of her early films, you could tell she was going to go on to greater things. Uh, Near Dark is a good film, and this film is pretty underrated for the way it's shot. I would say that. Pardon the pun. Okay, the film stars Jamie Lee Curtis, Ron Silver, and Clancy Brown, and it was initially set to be released by Vestron Pictures, but Vestron went under, and it was eventually, ultimately released by MGM, which acquired the film from Vestron due to their financial problems and their eventual bankruptcy. But the movie follows a rookie cop played by Jamie Lee Curtis. Her name is Megan Turner, and she's just becoming an NYPD patrol officer. Now, on her first, or I think it's her first day on the job, her and her partner are stopped to use the restroom, and she notices that in the store across the street there is a robbery taking place. And the suspect seems very erratic because he's being played by, of course, Tom Sizemore. So she goes across the street like any good cop would do, and instead of calling for backup or setting up outside or anything like that, she decides the smart thing to do is to sneak into the back of the store and force a confrontation with this guy who's holding a 44 Magnum. And so that's what she does. She sneaks into the back of the store. She creeps up the. It seems like an alleyway because of what's happening, but it's actually just an aisle with bread. She creeps up that and has this confrontation with the guy. Now we see that there's other people inside the store, and one of them is being played by Ron Silver, who apparently was frozen in carbonite somewhere around this time. He's not seen much in the 90s, and then after that, not at all so much, right? But Ron Silver was a great actor and really good in some of these films. Ron Silver's playing like a day trader guy. He's just your average, city Joe, and he's on the floor while this robbery's going down, and he's watching Jamie Lee Curtis come up the aisle and have this confrontation with the guy. Well, she tells the guy, freeze. If you move, I'll blow you away. Of course, he swings towards her, and when he does, she unloads on him, blows him through the damn plate glass window, right? Like any good 80s movie. Now, what happens next is kind of weird. Ron Silver takes the gun that the assailant, the suspect, dropped, the 44 Magnum. He just kind of covers it with his hand and slips off somehow without being questioned or anything. There's a lot of things in this movie that don't make sense, guys. There are things I love about it. There are things about it that work very well. But there is a major logic problem with this film. Nothing in it makes sense. I mean, nothing that happens. It's almost like it's a separate world from reality or something. Because, I let the first one go. The first thing is no cop would ever actually approach this situation like this, because the first thing that you're taught as a cop is not to make anything worse, or that's the way it's supposed to be. You're not supposed to make a bad situation worse. The best thing for her to have done would have been to pull her car in front of the store, turn the lights on, so they knew she was responding to the call, and then called for backup and had some kind of a negotiation or something. But anyway, we let that one go because it's in line with 80s, the 80s thought process and fantasy world about police officers. So we'll let that one go. But then we get to the next part, which is we see that, Jamie Lee's been brought in and questioned about what happened. Nobody found the gun, and so now they're giving her grief about was there even a gun. But there's like 18 people in this store that saw what happened, but apparently none of them actually saw what happened, and it gets kind of lame for a minute there, because it's like you hired her as a cop, but you don't trust her to tell you the truth about having to kill this guy. You think she just did it for no reason. I mean, you think all these people were on the floor in the store and cowered and all that for no reason? And here's where we're introduced to Clancy Brown, who is miscast in this, I think. I don't know. I like Clancy Brown, and he does a decent job with what he's got here, but he's cast as this kind of like tough guy, almost like he's supposed to be sexy New York detective, and it's just not him. It's so not his style. And but yeah, he kind of gives her some shit about what happened, and they suspend her for a few days. Well, during this time, we see that now Ron Silver, uh, this event has pushed him a separate direction. We had two people. He was terrified in this moment, didn't know what to do, felt afraid, and she took control in the moment and killed this guy with this gun, and now he has a gun. So you kind of start to put together what's going on here, right? He's losing it. This gun has represented a new sense of power to him, and he doesn't have to be scared in his life anymore. And so he starts pulling the gun on people, and eventually he shoots somebody. And now there's the next problem I have with this movie is that it's a revolver. He shoots this guy 2 or 3 times, I can't remember, but he never empties the revolver. Like, he never empties the shells from the revolver. And it's just, if you have a semi-automatic pistol, it'll kick the shells out. But if you have a revolver, they stay in. They don't fall out. They stay in the case. But anyway, he does somehow lose these 2 shells, and the shells have Megan Turner carved into the side of them, which is the name of Jamie Lee Curtis's character. And then he stages a little, what they call it, a meet cute situation where he meets her in the rain, and an officer arrived in the taxi cab that he's hailed. And they make an instant connection. Ron Silver's funny here. He's a good actor. And what's interesting is I read about this is that they had actually picked another actor to play this part, and they switched it at the last minute, and it was Jeff Korb, I want to say, the guy that played oh man, what was he in? He was in The First Power. You guys probably remember this. The First Power with Lou Diamond Phillips. He was the bad guy. And he's been in a few other things. He's got a face that lends itself to prosthetic work and stuff like that. So yeah, so he was their original choice. So they were going to go real weird with this. They were going to go Clancy Brown as one of the leading men and Jeff Korb as the other one. Yeah, that would have been a tough decision for Jamie Lee, who was at the time still probably one of the sexiest women in acting. But anyway, so yeah, we see this relationship develop between Ron Silver and Jamie Lee Curtis. But it's ridiculous because as soon as they find these shells with her name carved into the side, they call her back in, and they tell her, okay, well, we now all of a sudden we kind of believe that you're telling the truth. And oh yeah, by the way, we're gonna take you off suspension because that makes sense given this situation, and we're going to make you a full-fledged detective so you can hang around the detectives unit all day and work on the case with them, because that's what happens when you go through all this stuff and you're a cop. They make you a detective instantly, right? Whew, yeah, it gets deep and it gets thick, folks. And then the next thing that happens that's a pain in the ass is that they call her in to question her about all this, and they tell her, they're like, look, whoever this is, they got a hard on for you. Have you just met anybody, or has anybody seemed weird to you? And nothing crosses her mind. She just had this weird encounter with this guy she's never met before. They're now dating, and she never mentions him as possibly somebody who could be doing this. And so we go from here, and she meets up with Ron Silver again, and we see that Clancy Brown's following her now, and tells her, "Oh, I checked up on this guy, and he's a day trader and this and that, and there's nothing to worry about." But I mean, what do you mean there's nothing to worry about? I mean, Are you following the guy? Something is going down, and he just happens to be at the right place at the right time. But let's not look too hard at him, right? And so the killings keep going, and we watch. It's not a montage. There's no music to it, but we skip forward quick, like the relationship between Jamie Lee and Ron Silver, and plus his killings that are going on now. He's becoming like a known serial killer. It's kind of like a flip book section where we just go through this part really fast, and because the next part they want us to see is the conflict between the two of them. So, pretty early on in this movie, Ron Silver, I mean, he's going nuts. This is one of the good things about the movie is Ron Silver's performance. He's a great actor. He is in tremendous shape in this movie for some reason, which I'd never seen him like that before. You see him working out relentlessly over and over, and this is kind of a thing with psychopaths portrayed in 80s movies is that they were health nuts too. They always worked out, They always had a Bowflex that they were going at. He kind of reminds you of Patrick Bateman because he's got that slick Manhattan psychopath look to him, And yeah, he's absolutely losing it. He starts talking to himself, which it works because Silver's good at it, but it also seems a little odd that it's brought in like, later in his psychosis. It's not the first thing that happens to him. He doesn't start hearing voices. That comes later. But anyway, so we go from here, and like I said, there's a lot of things you have to buy in the movie, right? But Ron Silver keeps antagonizing her. I mean, now he basically confesses to her, but she can't prove it, which doesn't really matter. I mean, if they really thought this guy did it, they would have arrested him. They'll build the damn case before it goes to court. They're not going to let him walk the streets. And but they do let him go. Richard Jenkins comes in, who's a great actor and plays his lawyer in this, and gets him out of trouble. And so the next thing he does is just walk right up to Jamie Lee and her friend Elizabeth Pena and just blows her friend away. But because he walked up behind them, they still don't believe her when she says he has killed her friend. Now, it starts to get ridiculous. And it actually just gets worse. I mean, there's a scene where they realize he's been hiding his weapon in the park because he's out there, like, psychotically digging for it, foaming at the mouth. But when they encounter him, instead of doing anything about what's going on, they let him go and say, he'll come back later and we'll catch him then. They don't look for the gun, knowing where it's at. They don't do anything like that. They just sit in the car and stake the place out. There's several scenes like that where this guy's going in and out of his building and supposedly they're watching him, but they're not really watching him, And so we get towards the end. Everything's pretty ridiculous at this point, and we have a long, drawn-out gun battle between Ron Silver and Jamie Lee Curtis, and that's the end of the film. And it's anticlimactic to a point that's terrible because it's supposed to be climactic. It's done in slow motion. It's, beautifully shot, but there's just something that's lacking there. And also, what is this movie trying to say? I mean, honestly, in the beginning, it seems to be against gun violence. I mean, it talks about how, Jamie Lee didn't want to kill this guy. He put her in a situation where she had to kill him. And, she's not happy about that. It's not like she wanted to do it. It was just her job. And then it goes into Jamie Lee Curtis is a tough guy. She's, Sylvester Stallone type cop by the end of this, where she's just going to blow this guy away. And today that movie would have been done differently. You couldn't even do this movie today, first off, because for any of this movie to work, there has to be no cameras in the world. Because if there's one camera in the world, it doesn't work. Ron Silver's caught in 15 minutes if there's a single camera in the universe in this movie. And so that alone would not work. But if it was done today, that they would change the end of this. It would have been like where she had him totally to the point where he could not fight her anymore, and drew down on him, and then decided to let him live and go to jail because she had killed the other guy when she had no choice. It makes sense, right? So that at the end, she would have this choice to kill Ron Silver, and she wouldn't. But that's not the way it goes. No, she blows Ron Silver's ass away I don't think I'm spoiling too much here. If you haven't seen the movie, you can see where it's going while you're watching it. I mean, it's not a twist. There's no twist ending here. It's relentless. Ron Silver gets, you know, blown away by Jamie Lee Curtis, who was playing almost kind of like a Clarice type character to an extent, although Clarice was much smarter and was able to figure out the motives of. It's a situation where a female, is dropped into a world full of men, and we're given that perspective of what's going on, which is interesting. That's always fun, especially for that era because it was such a juxtaposition. I mean, we all remember like the old sexist jokes about women being cops and doctors and stuff like that. We all remember that, and we're just talking about 30 years ago, guys. Not even our lifetime, beyond our lifetime. So it is interesting to see. This is a woman driven film. It's directed by a woman. The main star of the movie, and it was promoted that way, was Jamie Lee Curtis. It was no coincidence she was in it. It was a part written for a lead female. She got it. And the movie works in a lot of ways. Like Ron Silver's performance as a psychopath is perfect. Jamie Lee's character is weak and strong at the same time, which is very interesting. She makes some bad choices when it comes to people she cares about. And that's interesting. It's probably more true than what any of us want to believe. But ultimately, the film fails because it has no idea what it is. It doesn't seem like they talked to any police officers at all when they were setting out to make this. They never tried to make it realistic at all. None of the police procedural stuff is realistic, other than there is a short scene at the beginning. It's similar to the short scene in Silence of the Lambs when Clarice is training, where Jamie Lee goes in on a couple that's having a domestic dispute, and she forgets to stay in the moment. She gets tunnel vision and focuses on the male victim and gets shot by the female. It's a training exercise. It's not a real thing, but that is something that they would teach you as a cop, is because 9 out of 10 times when a cop gets shot at a domestic disturbance, it's the person they weren't controlling because the other person was acting erratic. That's a fact. So that was interesting. But other than that, it doesn't seem like they talk to cops very much at all. They do so many stupid things in this movie that don't make any sense, and nobody ever believes Jamie Lee Curtis, which gets frustrating, even though it is a late 80s, early 90s movie. It gets frustrating to a point where it's unbelievable. I mean, she is a police officer. At some point, you have to either fire her, arrest her, or go arrest him. You can't keep playing this game of, well, yeah, somebody's running around murdering people, but why would we believe you when you tell us it's him? You don't know what you're talking about. Why the fuck did you hire her if you truly believe that? Not to get, I mean, it's just, it's very frustrating, not confusing. It's frustrating. It's confusing to think that somebody thought that was a good plot line to keep running and running and running. But yeah, the gaslighting is, terrible. Oh, you're a woman. You must be a hysterical woman. We're not going to trust you. So guys, all in all, I'm going to give Blue Steel, I'm going to give it 6 out of 10. I wish I could give it more. I remember it more fondly. When it came out, I was about 10 years old. I remember seeing it and thinking, damn, that was pretty good for a thriller. Especially, I had not seen one that had been done like that yet with guns, where it's a thriller movie, but the guy has a gun. It's not just a straight up shoot 'em up action movie. There's more drama to it than that. So I really enjoyed it as a kid, but going back and rewatching it, it does not hold up. The entire police part of this movie is, steeped heavily in 1980s police fantasy world, which is so far off the map that it's just almost kind of disgusting the way that this was seen. The way this was seen, probably by a whole generation of kids who grew up to be cops. And then we wonder what's wrong with our cops, because I love John McClane, and I like this movie, but there is a serious cultural problem in the U.S. when it comes to toxic masculinity and the way that men and women sometimes look at weapons and hold them, like worship weapons. They hang them on a wall and worship them and talk about, this and that. And it's like, it's a tool. That's the way I was always taught, even when I was a cop. A weapon is a tool. You take it out of the toolbox when you need it. You use it. and then you put it back into the toolbox. I don't hang wrenches in my house. I don't hang hammers in my house because they're inanimate objects. They have no power except for the power that you give them. And if you're hanging it above your wall and having it plated in gold and naming it and stuff like that, that can become toxic. And this whole belief of blowing people away, and that's the way Americans are, and that's all bullshit. And it leads people to develop both false perceptions of the way we truly are, and it also allows people to get lost in those false perceptions. Some of these people who go out and do atrocious things, they get there because somebody along the way told them that having a gun was super cool and it would solve all your problems. And that's not true. Even if you kill everyone you hate, you still haven't solved any of your problems. Uh, all right, guys, that's all we got for this week, and that's my PSA. That's I'm not trying to get political. I mean, I believe in guns. Trust me. I was a cop for 12 years. I carried one every day. There is a time and a place for everything, but there's also, in the sense that I wouldn't want Kim Jong Un to own a nuclear weapon. I wouldn't want Billy Bob Fucknuts to own a automatic rifle. I just wouldn't. And to me, they say, well, people kill people. Guns don't kill people. That's bullshit. Because if you give a stupid person, you could say, well, that person was stupid. Yes, they were stupid. But why should we give someone who's stupid the ultimate method of killing somebody else? You know what I mean? I mean, here's a weapon that'll kill 60 people in 2 minutes. Here you go, buddy. We know you're mentally deranged, and we could probably keep you to attacking somebody with a knife or a hammer, or maybe even a car and killing 3 or 4 people. We could keep you limited to that, but you know what? We've got something special for you. This is America, and God damn it, you deserve a fully automatic rifle to go hunting people with. Now, come on, this is stupid. There's a lot of people out there who do not deserve to own a gun. There's people out there who shouldn't have kids. There's people out there who shouldn't drive a car. You know who they are because they can't get a fucking driver's license. And there's no reason that we can't be more intelligent as a community, as a society, as a civilization. All right, guys. That's all we got for this week, and we will talk to you the next time we've got something we're talking about. Bye.